August 20th, 1989, Beverly Hills, California. It's a quiet Sunday night on North Elm Drive. Inside a mansion worth over $5 million, a wealthy family is spending the evening like any other. Then suddenly, gunfire. Neighbors hear explosions, loud, echoing blasts cutting through the peaceful streets. Police rush to the home of José and Kitty Menendez, two respected figures of Los Angeles' elite. What they find inside doesn't look like a burglary. It looks like a war zone. The parents, both shot multiple times in their living room. The house in chaos. And hours later, their two sons, Lyle and Erik Menendez, walk into the mansion, crying, shouting, "Someone killed our parents!" At first, detectives believed them. They looked like grieving sons. But soon, the truth would twist in a direction no one could imagine. Two brothers, one family secret, and a murder that would divide America forever. The perfect Beverly Hills family. To understand what happened that night, we have to go back to the beginning, to a picture-perfect family living what seemed like the American dream. The Menendez family was rich, polished, and powerful. José Menendez, the father, was a Cuban immigrant who had built his fortune from scratch. He worked his way up from nothing to become a top executive in Hollywood, managing music and movie companies. He was sharp, strict, and deeply ambitious. To him, success wasn't optional. It was survival. His wife, Mary Louise Kitty Menendez, had once been a beauty queen and a teacher. Friends described her as elegant and charming, but also fragile. A woman living under the weight of her husband's perfectionism. And then there were the sons. Lyle, the older one, confident, athletic, bold. And Erik, the younger one, quiet, artistic, more emotional. They grew up in mansions, wore designer clothes, and drove expensive cars. From the outside, they were the definition of success. But inside the walls of their home, something darker was growing. A father's shadow. José Menendez demanded perfection. He wanted his sons to be champions. In school, in sports, in life. He expected respect, obedience, and results. Friends of the family later said José's word was law. If he said something, no one argued. Kitty, meanwhile, struggled to keep the peace. She adored her sons, but often felt powerless. Some said she leaned on alcohol. Others said she simply gave up trying to control José's temper. The boys lived under pressure. To the world, they were lucky, rich, educated, handsome. But behind closed doors, their lives were built on fear. And that fear, investigators would later claim, was what planted the seed of everything that followed. Privilege and pressure. By the mid-1980s, Lyle and Erik were teenagers. They had every luxury money could buy. Private schools, tennis lessons, vacations. But their father's success came with strings. He wanted them to be more than sons. He wanted them to be reflections of his own ambition. Erik loved writing and tennis. Lyle dreamed of running his own business. But neither could meet José's expectations. If they failed, they feared his anger. If they succeeded, it was never enough. This pressure slowly turned into resentment. Friends would later describe how the brothers seemed oddly close, more like teammates than siblings. They didn't trust anyone but each other. And behind their confident smiles, something was boiling, a mix of fear, anger, and confusion that would one day explode. The night everything changed. On the night of August 20th, 1989, the Menendez brothers told police they had gone to see a movie, the new James Bond film, License to Kill. When they came home, they said, they found their parents dead. They claimed they didn't hear or see anything unusual before that. Police found no signs of forced entry. The living room showed no signs of robbery. Nothing was stolen. At first, detectives suspected the murders were linked to José's business life. Maybe organized crime, maybe revenge. But the longer the investigation went on, the stranger the brothers' behavior became. Grief that looked different. After the funeral, detectives watched the brothers closely. Their grief seemed real, but also odd. Instead of lying low, Lyle and Erik started spending money. They bought Rolex watches, luxury cars, expensive clothes. Lyle invested in a restaurant. Erik hired a personal tennis coach and traveled to meet women. In just a few months, they spent more than $700,000 of their parents' money. To detectives, that didn't look like grief. It looked like celebration. But still, there wasn't enough evidence to accuse them. Not yet. The first cracks appear. Months passed, but the police couldn't find a motive that fit. Then, a strange tip came from someone unexpected, a therapist. Erik, the younger brother, had broken down during a counseling session. He told his therapist, Dr. José, a secret he couldn't keep anymore. He said, "We did it. We killed them." And then he told the story of how and why. That confession would tear the case wide open, but it wouldn't be simple. The therapist's tapes, the brothers' reasons, and the story behind why they said they did it would turn this from a murder case into a national obsession. Because soon, the world would stop asking, did they kill their parents? And start asking, why? The confession tapes. We did it. Months had passed since the murders of José and Kitty Menendez. The police were stuck. No fingerprints, no forced entry, no witnesses. And the two sons, Lyle and Erik, were living freely in Los Angeles, spending money, traveling, smiling in public. But beneath that calm surface, guilt was starting to crack through. Erik Menendez couldn't sleep. He couldn't see, seeing what had happened that night. He needed to talk to someone, so he called a therapist. Meeting the therapist. Erik found Dr. José, a Beverly Hills psychologist known for counseling young men struggling with family pressure and anxiety. At first, their sessions were normal. Erik talked about guilt, fear, confusion. He told Dr. José he was haunted by something he couldn't say out loud. Then one day, he broke. He leaned forward in the chair, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "We did it. We killed them." Dr. José froze. He thought he misheard, but Erik continued. He told the doctor how he and his brother had planned it, how they bought the shotguns, how they waited until that quiet Sunday night, and how it was finally over. The therapist sat in silence, realizing he was hearing one of the biggest confessions in California's history. The secret tapes. José did something unusual. He secretly recorded his sessions with Erik and Lyle. He told his mistress, a woman named Judalon Smith, about the confession. She later said she was terrified. She feared the brothers might come after them. When their relationship turned sour, Judalon went to the police. She told them everything. The police didn't believe her at first, until she mentioned the tapes. Now the detectives had what they had been missing for months: proof. "We did it," the tapes revealed. On the tapes, Erik's voice was shaky but clear. He admitted that he and Lyle had planned the murder together. He said they were afraid their father was going to disinherit them, cut them off completely from the family fortune. He described how they sat in the living room that night, waiting for their parents to come home from the movies. He said when they heard the sound of the garage door, their hearts pounded. Then he said, "We did it." The arrest. Once police confirmed the existence of the tapes, everything changed. They surrounded Lyle and Erik's mansion in Beverly Hills. Lyle was arrested first. In March 1990, as he walked out of his house in a crisp polo shirt, calm and composed. Erik, who had been competing in a tennis tournament in Israel, turned himself in days later. The world watched as two rich, handsome brothers were led away in handcuffs. For many Americans, it was unthinkable, sons killing their own parents. But soon, the story would grow even more complicated. Because the brothers claimed they didn't kill out of greed, they killed out of fear. The story changes. At first, prosecutors painted a simple picture: two spoiled rich kids who wanted their parents' money. But when the defense spoke, everything changed. They claimed the brothers had lived through years of abuse, emotional, physical, and even worse. They said the parents were not victims of cold-blooded greed, but of revenge and desperation. Suddenly, America was divided. Was this a story of cruelty and greed, or of survival inside the courtroom? The Menendez brothers' trial began in 1993, nearly 4 years after the murders. It wasn't just a trial, it was a national event. Television cameras broadcast every word. Talk shows debated every detail. For the first time, millions of Americans watched a murder trial unfold live, day after day. In their opening statements, the brothers' lawyers described a childhood filled with fear. They said José Menendez had been a violent man, obsessed with control. They claimed Kitty was emotionally unstable and looked the other way. The brothers, they said, killed their parents not out of greed, but out of terror. Public opinion splits. The public couldn't decide what to believe. Some saw two traumatized young men finally standing up to their abusers. Others saw spoiled killers trying to twist the story to save themselves. TV networks called it the trial of the decade. Psychologists were invited on shows to discuss family dysfunction. The Menendez name became a household word, a symbol of both tragedy and privilege. As the trial went on, something surprising began to happen. The jury couldn't agree. Was it murder for money or murder out of fear? The brothers had confessed, yes, but the reason behind that confession would become the most debated question in American true crime history. And when the verdict finally came, it would change the way the world viewed not just the Menendez brothers, but family itself.